Lean close to the kitchen drain. Not the surface, the opening itself. That damp, sour, faintly rancid breath rising from the pipe is not normal plumbing. It is years of cooking grease, animal fat, dish soap residue, and decaying food particles, coated layer by layer along the inside of the drain pipe like hardened wax. Every greasy pan rinsed under hot water adds another invisible film. The hot water dissolves nothing. It only buys time. The moment the emulsified fat passes the trap and enters the cooler pipe below, it congeals, it clings, it compounds. After a decade in the same house, the interior diameter of a kitchen drain can narrow by 30 to 50% without a visible sign at the sink. Inside that suffocating coat of grease, anaerobic bacteria thrive. Starved of oxygen, they metabolize the organic matter and exhale hydrogen sulfide, the chemical signature of rot. The smell rising from the sink in the evening is a microbial waste product. 1 tablespoon of a single white crystal, dissolved in hot tap water and left overnight, ends it. Cost per use? About 25 cents. Annual cost at once a month? Roughly $1. The crystal is sodium carbonate, sold in the laundry aisle as washing soda. It has been doing this exact job for over 160 years. The protocol that waited in an archive. The protocol is not new. In December 1883, the Philadelphia Public Ledger, Philadelphia's largest circulation daily, owned since 1864 by the publisher George William Childs, printed a household tip from a retired plumber with 30 years of practice clearing residential drain pipes. The column was reprinted across the American medical and household press through the rest of the decade. It read, in the careful certainty of a man describing something he had done many times, "Before retiring at night, pour into the pipe enough liquid potash lye to fill the trap. About a pint will suffice for a washstand, or a quart for a bathtub or kitchen sink. During the night, the lye will convert all of the offal in the pipe into soft soap, and the first current of water in the morning will remove it entirely and leave the pipe as clean as new." He continued in the same plain tone. The writer has never had occasion, in over 30 years' experience, to make more than 2 applications of it in any one case. 30 years of practical use printed in a newspaper that ran from 1836 until 1942, archived now in the digital collections of the National Library of Medicine. The chemistry the writer was describing had a name he never used and a history older than the country he was writing in. 20 years before that retired plumber picked up his pen, in Belgium, a young chemist named Ernest Solvay filed a patent. The date was April 15, 1861. Solvay had been forced to leave formal schooling early because of fragile health, a chronic chest condition that turned a Belgian salt refiner's son into a self-taught chemist working from books and his father's workshop. By 23, he had figured out how to make sodium carbonate from common salt, limestone, ammonia, and water. Cheap, abundant raw materials, almost no toxic waste. By 1865, his first factory was running near Charleroi. By 1913, the Solvay process was producing most of the world's sodium carbonate. The salt that had been an expensive industrial chemical became, within 1 generation, a commodity any household could afford for pennies a pound. The chemist who left school because of his lungs would later use his fortune to fund the Solvay conferences, the physics meetings beginning in 1911 that brought Einstein, Marie Curie, and Max Planck into the same room. But before any of that, he made the white salt that kept a Victorian kitchen drain clear. How the commodity arrived. To understand what Solvay had displaced, look at the earlier method. From 1791 until the late 1880s, industrial sodium carbonate was made by the Leblanc process, which produced hydrochloric acid gas as waste and killed crops downwind. The compound was expensive, polluting, and rationed. Glassmakers and textile bleachers got it first. Households got whatever was left. Households that could not afford industrial soda made their own alkali the older way, hardwood ashes steeped in water. The leached liquid, called lye, was rich in potassium carbonate. It cleaned grease, it made soap. It also varied in strength depending on the wood and the patience of whoever leached it. When Solvay's process scaled up after 1865, the price collapsed. Sodium carbonate moved from industrial barrel to grocery shelf. A pound that had cost laborers a day's wages in 1820 cost pennies by 1880. The variable lye of the wood ash era was replaced by a standardized, pure, dirt-cheap white powder, performing the same chemistry every time. The same year Solvay filed his patent, on the other side of the English Channel, a young Englishwoman named Isabella Beeton finished compiling the Book of Household Management. Published in 1861, it became one of the most influential domestic manuals in the English-speaking world. It treated washing soda as a basic kitchen supply. Beeton died in 1865 at the age of 28, a week after the birth of her fourth child. Her book outlived her by more than a century. 7 years before Beeton finished her book, in New York, an American physician named William Whitty Hall founded Hall's Journal of Health. Hall was born in Paris, Kentucky in 1810. His journal, launched in 1854, became one of the first health monthlies in the United States aimed at ordinary households rather than physicians. Through the 1860s, 70s, and 80s, Hall's journal and dozens that followed its model printed household chemistry protocols, drain maintenance among them, directly into American families. Hall himself died in May 1876, working in violation of his own published health rules. He weighed 125 pounds. He fell on a New York street after a workday that began at 5 in the morning. His journal continued for another 17 years. Between 1865 and roughly 1960, washing soda appeared in almost every standard housekeeping manual in Britain and North America. It was as ordinary as flour. A yellow box of Arm & Hammer washing soda, a brand introduced to the American market in 1846, sat above the kitchen sink in millions of homes. The same box, the same compound. The same chemistry the Philadelphia Public Ledger's retired plumber had described as the cure for a clogged country drain. A protocol written down by hand, copied into household manuals for 80 years, sold in a yellow box for $120. Then, sometime between 1960 and 1980, it slipped quietly out of common knowledge. The molecular machinery. The grease coating a kitchen drain pipe is not abstract dirt. It is mostly triglyceride, a glycerol molecule with 3 long fatty acid chains attached by ester bonds. Add free fatty acids, protein fragments, soap scum, and the calcium salts that form when soap meets hard water, and the mixture hardens into something resistant to almost every solvent the kitchen has. Hot water alone does nothing chemical. The heat softens the surface, the flow carries away what has not yet hardened, and the moment the water cools in the next bend of pipe, the fat reconsolidates. Dish soap emulsifies grease into microscopic droplets, but the droplets travel only as far as the next cool zone before recombining. Both are temporary actions on a permanent deposit. Sodium carbonate behaves differently because it does not act mechanically. It acts chemically. Dissolved in hot water, sodium carbonate produces a strongly alkaline solution at pH 11.3 to 11.6. At that point, hydroxide ions attack the carbonyl carbon of ester bonds in the triglyceride. The hydroxide displaces the glycerol oxygen, the ester bond cleaves. The fatty acid chain, suddenly free, encounters a sodium ion and bonds with it to form a sodium carboxylate, a fatty acid salt. The chemical name for this reaction, performed for thousands of years before anyone understood the molecules, is saponification. The product has a more familiar name: soap. The grease coating the pipe is converted, molecule by molecule, into water-soluble soap that the next flow of water carries away. The conversion is not loosening, not displacement, chemical destruction of the original triglyceride. What was sticky, hydrophobic pipe clinging becomes a hydrophilic salt that dissolves in cold tap water. The glycerol backbone dissolves harmlessly into the wastewater. Without the grease matrix, anaerobic bacteria lose their habitat. Within 48 hours, the hydrogen sulfide stops and the odor disappears. Washing soda is roughly 2,000 times more alkaline than a baking soda solution. The pH scale is logarithmic. Each unit represents a 10-fold difference. Baking soda sits at about 8.1. Washing soda sits at 11.4. The gap is 3 orders of magnitude. Baking soda has effectively zero power to break an ester bond. The famous fizzy volcano of baking soda and vinegar is a simple neutralization yielding carbon dioxide, water, and a trace of sodium acetate. Satisfying theater. It does not touch grease at the molecular level. This is the chemistry that 19th century cooks performed without ever knowing its name. What was lost? Until the early 1960s, washing soda appeared in standard American and British kitchen manuals as routine drain maintenance. By 1980, it was gone from those manuals. Within one generation, the knowledge slipped out of common practice. The compound did not die. The marketing budget for it died. Anyone whose grandmother kept house in North America or Britain before 1965 almost certainly grew up walking past a yellow box on a shelf above her kitchen sink. She may not have known the word triglyceride. She may not have heard of saponification or Ernest Solvay. She knew the box kept the drains clear, that it had always kept the drains clear, and that her own mother had used it for the same reason. Then her daughter, or granddaughter, bought a bottle of bright blue gel from the supermarket aisle because the television commercial said it worked faster. The business architecture of forgetting. The reason washing soda disappeared from public knowledge is not a secret. It is an accounting problem, visible in any introductory marketing textbook. The patent on sodium carbonate expired in the 19th century. The Solvay process itself has been public chemistry for over 160 years. No company today owns the compound. A pound at a grocery store sells for $2 to $4. The producer's margin is razor thin. A single box lasts a household roughly 2 years of monthly maintenance. A product with these properties has almost no business case in the modern packaged goods industry. It cannot be branded distinctively from competitors offering the same compound. It cannot generate repeat sales on any useful frequency. There is no quarterly growth story to tell a board about a product the customer returns to every 24 months. And there is no marketing budget for a national campaign because there is no margin to fund one. Branded drain cleaners are a different category entirely. The first major one, Drano, was patented in 1923 by the Dracket Company of Cincinnati. Sodium hydroxide combined with aluminum granules. When water hits the mixture, the aluminum reacts violently with the caustic to generate hydrogen gas and exothermic heat. The mixture was patentable. The brand was defensible. The bottle was single-use. A household that bought Drano typically bought it again within months. Across the second half of the 20th century, dozens of branded drain cleaners followed the same template. Different mixtures, different colors, similar economics. Television advertising filled the cultural memory with bright bottles and dramatic kitchen rescues. The yellow box of washing soda received no television budget. Without one, it slowly faded from the spaces where consumer products live in the public mind. A compound that works too cheaply and lasts too long does not get advertised. A compound that does not get advertised slowly leaves the cultural memory. Within a generation, it disappears from common knowledge, not because anyone hid it, but because no one had a financial reason to remind anyone of it. Something does not need to be hidden to be forgotten. It only needs to be unprofitable to advertise. 2 comparisons. 2 practical comparisons make the structural argument concrete and verifiable at any hardware store this afternoon. First, cost per use. A 32-ounce bottle of branded liquid drain opener costs between $6 and $10 and clears 1 to 2 drains. A 55-ounce box of pure sodium carbonate costs $3 to $5 and holds enough material for 30 deep clean treatments, 12 to 15 years of monthly maintenance. Cost per use, branded, $3 to $10. Cost per use, historical chemistry, 12 to 25 cents. The chemistry on the grease is essentially the same alkaline ester hydrolysis. The difference is not the science. The difference is the business model wrapped around the science. Second, safety in modern plumbing. Branded drain openers based on sodium hydroxide work at pH 13 to 14, strong base territory. They are aggressively exothermic on contact with water, capable of briefly exceeding the heat tolerance of common pipe materials. Schedule 40 PVC, the standard in homes built since roughly 1970, has a maximum continuous operating temperature around 140 degrees Fahrenheit. The chemical heat from a poorly used caustic opener can briefly exceed that limit, causing what plumbers call Vicat softening at the joint, gradual deformation, slow joint failure, and leaks inside the wall surfacing as water damage months later. Washing soda dissolved in hot tap water sits at pH 11.4, strongly alkaline, but 2 full pH units gentler than caustic soda, and not exothermic on dissolution. It is non-corrosive to PVC, non-damaging to rubber seals, safe for the wax ring at the base of any fixture. It performs the same saponification on grease by milder chemistry with a longer contact time. The expensive option promises speed. The cheaper option delivers gentleness on the infrastructure and reaches the same endpoint by morning. A box that lasts 2 years costs less than a single bottle of the faster alternative. The protocol. The procedure is essentially what the Philadelphia Public Ledger's retired plumber described in 1883, adapted for modern plastic plumbing. The active work is approximately 30 seconds. The chemistry does the rest while the house sleeps. Pour 1 cup of dry washing soda crystals directly into the drain. The crystals must go in dry. Dry crystals settle into the trap where the grease is heaviest, rather than washing immediately past it. Wait 2 minutes. The crystals begin to absorb residual moisture from the pipe walls and the trap. Slowly pour 1 liter of very hot tap water, about 130 degrees Fahrenheit, the maximum from most domestic hot water systems on the hottest setting, into the drain. Do not pour rapidly boiling kettle water directly into modern PVC plumbing. Boiling water at 212 degrees Fahrenheit exceeds the continuous service temperature of Schedule 40 PVC by more than 70 degrees and can soften joints. Either set the hot water tank to maximum or let kettle water cool 15 minutes to drop below 140 degrees. Hot tap water is sufficient. The reaction does not require boiling. It requires contact time. Leave the drain alone for 6 hours minimum. Overnight is ideal. The reaction is slow at room temperature, and slow is what makes it gentle. 6 hours of contact at pH 11.4 will saponify essentially all the accessible grease in a residential drain line. In the morning, run hot tap water through the drain for 2 full minutes. This flushes the newly formed soaps and the glycerol byproduct out of the system. For a drain with severe long-term accumulation, a kitchen that has gone 5 or 10 years without proper maintenance, repeat on 3 consecutive nights. The first night clears the surface layer. The second reaches older buildup. The third typically reaches what plumbers would otherwise need a hydrojet to remove. After the initial deep clean, monthly maintenance keeps the pipe permanently grease-free. On the first day of each month, drop 2 tablespoons of washing soda dry into the drain, followed by 1 liter of hot tap water, last thing before bed. Total monthly cost, approximately 8 cents. Total annual cost, roughly $1. Honest limitations. The protocol is not a universal solution to every drain problem. It treats one specific category of obstruction with high reliability. The other categories require different tools. Washing soda does not dissolve hair clogs. Hair is keratin, a protein structure cross-linked by disulfide bonds that resists alkaline hydrolysis at residential concentrations. A hair-clogged bathroom drain needs mechanical removal, a plumber snake, a hair claw, or professional clearing. Washing soda does not dissolve calcium scale. The white crusted deposits forming on faucet aerators and inside pipes carrying very hard water are largely calcium carbonate and magnesium silicate. They require acid descaler, citric, muriatic, or sulfamic acid, not alkali. Alkali and calcium carbonate are chemical allies, not adversaries. Washing soda does not address tree root intrusion in older lateral sewer lines. Tree roots that have grown through cracked clay pipe junctions require chemical root treatment, a power auger, or pipe replacement. And washing soda will not unclog a drain that is already completely blocked solid. The protocol is preventative and progressive, not emergency. A fully obstructed drain has no flow path for the solution to reach the blockage. That requires mechanical clearing first. After the line is open, monthly maintenance keeps it open. The protocol is grease maintenance. It prevents and reverses one specific kind of drain pipe failure, the slow accumulation of cooking fat and the bacterial decay that follows. For that category, it is essentially complete. For the others, it is silent. Knowing the limit of a tool is not weakness, it is competence. The handoff. The smell rising from the kitchen drain is not a hygiene failure. It is a chemistry problem. The chemistry that solves it has been written down in plain English since at least the 1880s. The salt that performs it has been cheap enough for any household since Solvay's first factory began running in 1865. Mrs. Beeton printed the instruction in 1861, 4 years before her own death at 28. The knowledge passed through hands for 100 years. Then, sometime between 1960 and 1980, the hands stopped passing it. Not because anyone took it away, because no one had a financial reason to repeat it. The protocol is back in the open now. 2 tablespoons of sodium carbonate dissolved in hot tap water once a month before bed. 25 cents per use. 10 seconds of active work. The chemistry does the rest while the house sleeps. A retired plumber writing in the Philadelphia Public Ledger in 1883 set down a 30-year protocol that almost no one reads anymore. Ernest Solvay made the salt cheap enough that his great-great-grandchildren's kitchens could afford it. Whitty Hall founded the journal genre that put household chemistry into the hands of ordinary American families. Isabella Beeton put the instruction in a book the year she turned 25, 4 years before she died. The knowledge waited in archives and grocery store aisles for someone to pick it back up. Tonight, the pipe under the kitchen sink. Tomorrow morning, the drain runs clean. By the end of the week, the smell is gone. The comment section is the next archive. Anyone who runs this protocol on a slow drain, a smelly drain, a decade-old grease line. Leave a sentence the next viewer can use. What the drain looked like before. What it looked like the morning after. The next person reading this needs your field evidence more than any chemistry textbook. The Philadelphia Public Ledger's retired plumber set his protocol down in 1883 for the same reason. He had used it for 30 years. He thought someone else might need it.